Today we're going to take a look at Hashicorp Vault and how it can integrate with Morpheus, specifically how it can integrate with Morpheus through the use of the Hashicorp Vault Plugin, version 1.2.0 and higher. This version adds some new conveniences and some new capabilities that prior versions of the Hashicorp Vault Plugin for Morpheus do not. So if you have an older version, we do have another video that goes over how to use that particular version and how that feature set is laid out. If you're still using that older version, you may want to consider upgrading to the newer version, as you're going to see there are some conveniences and some additional features that didn't exist in the prior version of the plugin. If you do want to upgrade, or if you don't have the Hashicorp Vault plugin at all, you can go to share.morpheusdata.com. And there you'll find the Morpheus Exchange. One of the plugins that are available there is the Hashicorp Vault plugin. So you just download that jar file and add it to Morpheus. You can see back here in my Morpheus appliance, I do have that Vault plugin added in addition to one other plugin. And Morpheus is also helpfully letting me know that some of my other plugins are out of date and need to be updated. So the version 1.2.0 of the Hashicorp Vault plugin is compatible with Morpheus 5.5.1 and higher, so make sure you're running that version. And then just simply add the plugin jar and you're off and running. You don't have to log out and back in, restart anything. It'll just work. So the previous version of the plugin could communicate with Vault on the KV2 engine only. This updated version of the Vault plugin provides KV1 and KV2 engine support, and additional engine support could come later. These are also completely extensible as well, so if you wanted to add your own feature sets, add your own engine integrations, you could do that as well. Additionally, there's some convenience features such as Cipher now being able to take the Vault URL and token from the plugin integration itself. So there's no need for specific Cipher config entries, which you'd be familiar with if you've used prior versions of the plugin. But I'll point that out when we get to the demo part so you can see some of the conveniences. So after adding the plugin to Morpheus, you'll want to edit that and configure this. I've already configured it here, just pointing it to a URL for my server. I'm using the default port 8200, but whatever port you're using, you'll enter there. And I've also added my Hashicorp Vault token as well. We recommend that you use a long-lived token, as if this token becomes invalid for one reason or another, then things will just stop working. So if you're using this plugin to call secrets from Hashicorp Vault into your automation scripts, those will suddenly stop working, and it may take a bit of troubleshooting to figure out where that problem lies, and you'd have to come back in here and add a new token. So we recommend using a long-lived token just so that you would seldom run into an issue like that. But I'll go ahead and click Save. Now, if you're just going to use Hashicorp Vault with Morpheus Cipher, we don't have to do any additional configurations. So let's take a look at Cipher real quick, and we can see what we get just by adding the plugin, doing that little bit of configuration there, and stopping there. So if we go to Tools and then Cipher, Cipher is a secure key value store that Morpheus has offered for a number of years now. But one thing that we can do is we can store secrets in here that we want reflected on the back end in Hashicorp Vault, or we don't even have to add them through the Morpheus UI. By adding that plugin, we can actually just call in secret values out of Hashicorp Vault without even adding them here in Morpheus UI. But let's take a look at how to do, if we wanted to add one. We just click Add there, and then helpfully we have this Vault mount point here in the help block that can help us to get started. But if we wanted to add one, we would simply enter Vault, the engine that we wish to use, and then the path. So by default, this is going to be secret slash Morpheus slash key, or whatever you want this path to be. But the main thing is that we have the vault slash engine that we want to use, and then beyond that it's going to be whatever you want this path to be. I believe secret is the default, but this can be an arbitrary mount point as well. It just depends on your particular environment. So if we were to do that and then add some secret value here, we could save that and you would see it listed here in Morpheus UI. You could also decrypt it. I'm not going to decrypt any of these at this point, but you could decrypt it if you wanted to see it. You could call it into automation. But as I mentioned previously, we don't have to take that step. If we don't want it stored in both places, both Morpheus and in the Hashicorp Vault backend, by simply adding the plugin, we don't have to add them here into Morpheus UI at all. So let's take a look at a quick example here. I have some Vault examples for both KV Engine 1 and KV Engine 2. Let's take a look at 2 first. This is the engine that was supported by the previous plugin. We now, with this updated plugin, support KV1 and KV2. So taking a look here, how in our automation script, how would we get a secret value out of Cipher? And that's whether it exists only in the Hashicorp Vault backend or if it also exists in Morpheus UI. Either way is fine. But what we do is here in this example bash script, all I'm doing is echoing out the secret. And we can do that by calling cipher.read and then giving the path. And the path is going to be very similar to the path that you would use in the Hashicorp Vault API, if you're familiar with that. So just like I showed when I was creating my example back in Cipher, you're going to begin with vault/kv2 and then the path. So in this case, I went for the secret at the path secret/data/Morpheus/lab. You'll recognize probably that /secret/data as being the starting part of the path if you're using Hashicorp Vault API, if you've done that in the past. Now this is a new syntax for the new updated version of the plugin. The prior version of the plugin used a syntax like this, where it actually abstracted away the exact engine from the user because it only supported the KV2 engine anyway. So now with this new update, I would recommend that you go ahead and explicitly give the engine, but it's not strictly required, and that is for legacy compatibility with any automation you may have already written that's taking advantage of vault secrets. You can give the path in the same way that you would have given previously, and it will automatically fall back to using KV2, as I mentioned in my comment here. So these will both do the same thing, as you'll see when we take a look at the execution results. You can explicitly give the engine, or you can just automatically fall back to KV2 using this. But if you're writing new automation going forward, my recommendation would be to explicitly give the engine. And then down here, we'll take a look at this in a minute because we haven't gotten to credential sets yet. But let's take a look at the execution. This is an execution I ran a while back. You can see that I am successfully getting back my key value pair, which was just hello and world. And as I mentioned, these two are going to be the exact same thing. So this top one was giving the engine explicitly. This bottom was not giving the engine explicitly for legacy support, and we can see that both work. Let's take a look at that other example though, if you are using KV1 engine. And we've done something similar here, calling cipher.read and then giving the path. Again, it's going to be vault/engine, in this case vault/kv1, and then going on with the rest of the path. Now, just as an example, I put in the legacy pathing that we would have given before, and this is not going to work. So if you're using the KV1 engine, the legacy compatibility option is not going to work, as we didn't have KV1 engine support in the past. So if you're using the KV1 engine, you're always going to have to explicitly give the engine. And that's why I recommend just getting into the habit of giving the engine either way. That way you'll never be in a situation where one doesn't work. But I went ahead and added this just to show that it won't work. And with this credential, we'll come back in a minute and look at that in a little bit greater detail. So let's take a look at the execution. Again, I've saved the exact same key value pair here, hello and world, and you can see that we don't have the legacy pathing doesn't work for any secrets that are stored under the KV1 engine. You have to give those explicitly. So that's a look at how Morpheus Cipher and Hashicorp Vault can integrate if you use the plugin. And like I said, we don't have to do any additional configuration other than adding the plugin in Administration Integrations and then the Plugins tab. We don't have to do any configuration other than giving the URL and the token. In previous times, you did actually have to add 2 Cipher entries, one at vault/config/URL and one at vault/config/token. And Morpheus Cipher had to have that URL and token stored here. You can still do that if you want to do this without adding the plugin. But the plugin is easier, in my opinion. Once you add that plugin, you don't have to create Cipher entries for the URL and the token any longer. Morpheus will just automatically pull that URL and token from the configuration panel for the plugin, which we're seeing here. So you can just go right into consuming your Hashicorp Vault stored secrets in your automation scripts just by doing this little bit of configuration here with the plugin. So that's Cipher and how we can integrate with Hashicorp Vault, but Hashicorp Vault and Morpheus Credential Sets can also be integrated with each other. So let's take a look at Credential Sets. Those are stored in Infrastructure Trust and then the Credentials tab. Now what Credential Sets are in Morpheus are exactly that. They're just specific stored sets of credentials. That could be a username and password. That could be an access key and secret key, such as if you were integrating an Amazon AWS cloud with Morpheus. There's a number of different types of credential sets we can store, and then there are specific places in the UI that we can call those back. So just to show an example, if we were to add a new AWS cloud, we'll go in here to create a cloud, click on Amazon, and then click Next. Now before we had added the option for stored credential sets, you would always have to give your access key and secret key here, but we have the ability now to go to a stored credential set. So here I have one, which is an access key and secret key. I can click that. It's never revealed to the user, but they can use that to integrate a new cloud in this instance. This works with all of our supported cloud types. You can also use these to create integrations with other third-party technologies. It works with all those. So the Cipher stored secrets are really for calling back into your automation scripts, whereas stored credential sets make it easier to create integrations with third-party technologies in Morpheus. But we can, through the use of the Hashicorp Vault plugin, we can work with both of those constructs, both Cipher and the stored credential sets. So let's take a look at how that can work. If we want to use Vault and credentials together, we again need to go back into Infrastructure Trust. And by adding the Hashicorp Vault plugin, we're going to get a new option here within the Integrations tab. If we click Add, by default only this Cipher option is here. But by adding the plugin, we get the additional option of Hashicorp Vault credentials. So let's click on that just to see what we get. You can see that we can create a new credential set integration. It's going to take the typical things you'd expect: API, URL, token. You do specify which engine you want to utilize, and then you have these engine mount and secret path options that you can enter in. But Morpheus gives you some sensible defaults, which are convenient. So let's take a look at the one that I've already added here rather than adding a new one. If I click on this, you can see that I haven't strictly specified an API URL and token, and that's because if I leave these blank, Morpheus will automatically take the API URL and the token off of the plugin itself. So if I don't have any reason to supersede that, if I were to put something in here, it would supersede what is in the plugin config. But if I don't have a reason to supersede that, I don't have to. So I've left this open. I've selected KV version 2 engine. And then even though I have explicitly put the secret engine mount point and the Morpheus-credentials secret path, I wouldn't have had to do this because these are actually the default values. So I can just as easily have not entered these, saved my changes, and that would be perfectly fine. So if I've already configured the plugin itself, it's very, very easy to add the credential set integration, and I'll show you what that gives us here in a minute. I don't even have to do any additional configuration if I'm satisfied with the defaults and with the API URL and token that I've already configured on the plugin itself. So let's go to a new credential set, and let me show you what we get by adding that integration here on the integration tab. What we get is, let's say that we're adding a new access key and secret key. The default credential store is going to be internal. That means Morpheus is securely storing it for you, but that may not be acceptable, maybe based on your internal IT security policies or what have you. Maybe you have to store it into a different backend, in this case Hashicorp Vault. By adding that integration back here on this integrations tab, that gives me a new option underneath this credential store dropdown. I can now click Hashicorp Vault, which I get by adding that credential integration. So now I can do what I would typically do. I can enter the name, I can enter my access key, I can enter my secret key. And if I were to save that, that's going to give me a new entry here. And then anywhere that an access key and secret key would be relevant in the UI, I could call that back. But by choosing a different storage backend target labeled as the credential store, I'm sending that secret value directly to Hashicorp Vault in a secure manner. So Morpheus is never aware of what that access key and secret key would be, but it can securely call that back depending on where we would do that in the UI. So that's very convenient, and that's how we can add our stored credential sets to a Hashicorp Vault backend rather than through Morpheus internally, if that's what we want to do. Now we can do some things in automation with those as well, which you probably saw a moment ago when we were looking at our example. So if I pop this automation example back open, you can see that in this case I've referenced KV2 engine, and then the path secret is the default. As I mentioned, /data, this is again the Hashicorp Vault API syntax, /Morpheus-credentials, again that's the default. I didn't have to explicitly specify that if I want to accept the defaults, and then finally the key itself. So that's how I can grab a stored credential set if I want to in my automation script. So the automation scripts can grab those secrets, whether they're in Cipher, whether they're in credential sets, but within the UI itself, there are also some specific places where I can choose my credential sets as a convenience feature. And if we look at the execution history on that, you can see that that was a username and password type credential set. That's one of the credential set types we can choose. So you can see it successfully called back my username and password, which was just hello and world. And again, we can take a look at the KV1 engine example as well. So if we take a look at that, I've done a very similar thing here, specified the engine, but then it's again, the default secret and Morpheus credential mount points, and then my key. If we look at the execution history again, in that case, it was the exact same hello and world username and password that were stored previously. So in all of these cases, we are adding these to the Hashicorp Vault backend. They aren't stored in Morpheus itself internally if you do it this way. but it allows us to store these things in Morpheus for convenience and have them actually held on the Hashicorp Vault backend if that's required for your security policies. But also we can call back any stored secret value that's already in Hashicorp Vault without having to do things that are inconvenient, like and potentially insecure as well, like copying and pasting them from Hashicorp Vault into Morpheus Cipher. We can just securely call those in from Vault without necessarily even seeing those as an item in Morpheus UI. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, this is the version 1.2.0 of the Morpheus Hashicorp Vault plugin. Go grab that today from share.morpheusdata.com and get started with easy onboarding of your Hashicorp Vault stored secrets in Morpheus automation. Thank you.